everyone, and happy Tuesday. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Meredith, and I work here at Coastal Business Supplies, and today I am joined by our very special guest, Ashley Nace. Ashley is going to be walking us through the Artesprix Sublimation markers and specifically how you can use them to bring in sales for your business, especially during the holiday season and beyond. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to let Ashley take it away.
Hi, good morning, or I should say, well, here it's good afternoon, but I know where Coastal is, it's still good morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Meredith, for that great introduction. We are really looking forward to this webinar today and sharing some great information with the Coastal family. And you guys are really going to love this, and I hope it feels you inspired to get started with Artesprix if you have not done so already. So should I go ahead and take it into the next slide? Go ahead and get started.
Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So Artesprix is a company that was born in 2018 we started with sublimation markers. So that is our flagship product. So that is probably what you know us for. We are a complete line of sublimation products that allow anyone to permanently personalize their designs with sublimation blanks. And how cool is that? That this is something that they can personally do and make something and get involved with sublimation without a sublimation printer. With so many blanks to choose from, as you know, and along with dozens of marker colors, and there's so many things that they have to choose from, and they'll never run out of ideas to create custom projects that you guys know, just like traditional sublimation, will last a lifetime. So that is what Artesprix is, and Coastal carries all of our marker sets, the original 10 set, along with those 4 new colors that you see right there, and then one of those colors is actually a black pack as well, that one that's underneath that you can't really see, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So that is what Artesprix is. And so if you have not gotten your pack of markers already, you're going to want to do so now, and then hopefully after today's presentation, you'll want to start incorporating into your small business that you have. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so why we created Artesprix? Well, as I mentioned, Artesprix was born through traditional sublimation. We love traditional sublimation. Our parent company is involved with traditional sublimation, but we wanted to make sublimation available to everyone through crafting. And then once we did this, we saw that there's an opportunity for people with traditional sublimation businesses, or even just craft businesses in general, to be able to use our products to create a new stream of revenue. So that is why we created Artesprix. So let's talk about a sublimation station. So when you decide that you want to, you've got your markers, you've tried them, you love them, and you're like, my customers would love this too. Where do I get started? What you're going to want to do is you want to create a sublimation station. So this is an example of a sublimation station that we set up at a conference. You could do this if you have a small storefront, you could certainly do this in your storefront. And then if you don't have a storefront, you could certainly set up this type of situation at what I like to call a personalization party, which I will get into a little later. So this is what we call the sublimation station. And there are some supplies that you will need in order to host a sublimation station. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to have an area for the makers, as we call them, to create, and then you want to have a separate area where you can have your heat press, and you can kind of see that we have a sign that says caution. It's a cool down station, and we put these little project mats out here just to signify that let your item cool down before handling. But as you know, there's no dry time. There's no, as soon as that item's cooled down, they can take it with them. So it's really great. As you guys know, it's a pretty quick process, because after the part of drawing and things like that, it's the same step-by-step, making the sublimation sandwich, the transfer, all that. It's the same thing that you guys do with traditional sublimations. And so basically what you want to have on the table, on the maker's table, if you will, you want to have copy paper. And what we do is we actually cut down the copy paper to leave a 1 or 2 inch space around the blank. So if your blank is 2 by 3, you want that copy paper to be 4 by 5. So then that way, when you go to make your sublimation sandwich, you have that area that they need to tape down. Don't want to have scissors on the table because they're very tempted to cut out the template that they make. And then also you want to have a blank on the table that is the designated traced blank. So what I'll do is I'll actually make one that says trace me, and then I'll transfer it on there, and then it just stays on the table and it says trace me. And that's what they're going to trace with a pencil. So you got to have pencils on the maker's table too. And then that way that creates their template, okay? And pencil does not transfer. So then once they've taken the trace me blank on the paper, trace it with their pencil, then they're ready to color. So you certainly want to have markers on the table. And you might be able to see that the markers are tipped down on the table. So storage is very important with Artesprix markers to ensure the longevity of that. So what you want to do is when your markers are not in use, you want to store them horizontally. And then during use, you want to leave them tipped down. And especially in a time like this where the markers are going to be used frequently, you want to keep them tipped down to keep them nice and charged up. So, and then as far as the times that we're in, you certainly could have a pack or a certain set of 6 colors set for a person, and then wipe them down or spray them off, when they're finished, and wipe down the seat and the table area. So there are some things that you can incorporate during these COVID times to ensure safety if you're gonna go ahead and host a make and take. We actually hosted one in March when things were a little unknown, if you will, and we just made those general practices, and everything, as we know, was fine. So there are things that you can do in order to keep everybody safe during that time. And then some other things that you want to have you can have on the table are like stencils, because not everybody's artistically inclined. So just something to think about is to have some stencils. And if you have a cutting machine, you could create your own stencils, which is really, really cool. So or if you pick up stencils at your local craft store or something along with your theme, like let's say it's a birthday party and you want to have, happy birthday stencils or balloons or something like that. Anything that's text, all you have to do is flip it over and you can create mirrored text with a breeze with stencils. So we always have a stencil with just like an alphabet on the make and take table to just help people with that mirrored text. And then we have one last trick for mirrored text that I always like to share, because it is true that's usually the first thing people try to do is they try to write text. So you do have to watch out for that. So what we do is we have thin Sharpies on the table. I want to emphasize that these are thin Sharpies and not thick Sharpies. We've done some experimenting, and thick Sharpies tend to leave more of a residue than thin ones do. And so what we do is we have them write whatever they want to write. So let's say it's their dog name, like Bo. They'll write Sharpie, in thin Sharpie, B-O, and then flip that piece of paper over, and then they can see through their mirrored text and then they just trace it with Artesprix markers, and that's how they get that letter B, backwards B, much more easily. So that's something else that we keep on the table is thin Sharpies. So that, and then as far as the other table goes, I mentioned you have your cool down station, you have your heat press, and then of course you want to have all your tools to make your sublimation sandwich, which is the protective paper and the heat tape. And then, as you guys know, you fell in love with traditional sublimation. Anybody who doesn't know what sublimation is, when they get, a hands-on experience like this, they love to know more information, that sort of thing. So just make sure you have any relative information like directions or the FAQs or things like that, because they're intrigued. They certainly are intrigued. So that's about it for the sublimation station. Okay, so let's move right along. So if you have a small business storefront, like I mentioned, you can certainly hold classes. And what's really cool is you can hold all sorts of classes, and most of the items stay the same as far as tools and supplies that you need, except you can always change the blank based on the guest or the time of year or the occasion. There's just so many things that you could do. So like, for example, for like around Mother's Day, you could do a cutting board class and get the kids in your store and get the dads in there too, and everybody can make a cutting board for Mother's Day. So there's just so many options that you can do. And then also you can you know, have things that people want to use, and I'm sure you've seen this, like zip codes and airport codes, or happy birthday sayings, or even just like a small montage of coloring sheets. And I have an example here as well. So, and what's so you guys can certainly do that. And then I just love the idea of all these types of parties that you can have. You can have, you know, a baby shower, and there's all sorts of baby blanks that Coastal carries, and you could all do something for the baby, because what's so great about our products is they truly are traditional sublimation. So sometimes you go to baby showers and they'll do, like, it's adorable, but they'll do like puffy paint or something, and it's not in the fabric, or, you know, will they really wear it, or will it last through the third kid? You know, with something like this, with traditional sublimation, as you guys know, it's going to last a lifetime. So it takes this DIY projects that have kind of been something in the past, and it takes them to a more professional level that will last, you know, through the years. So that's something that's really nice and something to consider. You could do birthday parties, which is really fun. I love the idea of doing like a bachelorette party and doing, like, you could do the wine tumblers. Coastal has all sorts of wine bags that you guys could do too. There are so many things that you could do for bachelorette parties that they would just absolutely love. You could, you know, have family reunions and do, like, everybody make their own t-shirt, gender reveals, engagement parties. There are just so many ideas that you could do, and each time you can tailor that blank to the party and that theme and that occasion. So I think that's really cool. And Coastal has, as you guys know, so many blanks that you could do for all sorts of occasions that people would love to do. And then something else to consider when choosing your blank is the larger the blank, the longer it's going to take them to create. So if it's something like I was talking about, a bachelorette party, you know, maybe the wine tumblers, the wine bag's good, because then it would take them, like, you know, could take them like an hour, at least some people, to color that really big wine bag. And then for something like in our last live, it was like a make and take, you know, kind of like turn them and burn them type situations. We do smaller blanks like bookmarks, keychains, bag tags. So just consider that whatever your blank is, you know, if it's larger, it's going to take them longer to create. And then, you know, if it's smaller, it'll take them not as long to create. And don't forget that so many blanks are double-sided. So it's almost like you get extra bang for your buck, even though you're giving them one, even though you're only spending one blank bag tag, it's really 2 projects. So don't forget that too. Okay, so we were talking about your small business storefront, and I know not everybody has a storefront, so I have something for you all that do not. So with that, I will move on to the next slide. So let's say you don't have a storefront, and you want to provide a make and take for and get involved with Artesprix products. Another option that you could do is a farmer's market, and I know with right now, we're in Florida. I know we're lucky we can do farmer's market all year round, but everybody's trying to get outside with everything that's going on. So a farmer's market is a great way not only to host and make and take, you know, during that time, but also to display your small business in other ways. So for example, you have a farmer's market, and in the front you have 2 stools, like in that other slide with the sublimation station. I would have 2 small stools. And then what you can do is you can have a small blank, because you certainly don't want anybody to be there more than like 15 minutes, I would say, is usually what we try to keep it around. So those bag tags, keychains, bookmarks, Coastal has so many small blanks to choose from. And again, don't forget that some of those are double-sided. So you could even, you know, put your small business name on one side and just have them create on the other. You could charge maybe like $5 for a make and take like that. And it actually gets people like, into your booth. You could put like try sublimation. So many people don't know what sublimation is, learn about sublimation, sublimation station, make and take, iron and ink. Those are all things that you could use to help advertise and get people who, into your booth and just to get them to walk over there and help catch their eye. And then while they're waiting on their, sublimation sandwich to be transferred or their blank to be done, or while it's cooling, then they can look at all of the other things that you have to offer in the booth and, the traditional sublimation business that you have. And then they now know that that's not something that they have to order, online from, somebody else. That's something that they can support local by calling you and having you be their local personalization go-to. So something to consider to really get your name out there. And like I said, you can charge like $5 for the blanket, certainly if they're very, very small, or you could even do it another way with saying, if you spend $50, you have a complimentary make and take. So there are all sorts of ways that you could capitalize on this farmers market situation. So I just think that's a great idea, and people have really found success with that. Okay, so let's keep moving on and like I said, if you don't have a storefront, another option that you can think of is private parties. And I like to call these personalization parties. So I think certainly with everything that's going on, you might see people wanting you to come to their home or keep things more intimate. And even if you do have a storefront, this can still be something that you offer. You can certainly start to go to people's houses and do that. And what's so great about Artesprix, you can't bring, you could bring your sublimation printer, but it's not ideal. So what's great about this is, the products. And if you have a smaller heat press, like a 9x12 heat press or something else that Coastal carries that has a smaller footprint, if you will, those, aren't that bad to move around. So that's what we do. And then you can set up the same thing. You just want to let the people know that you just want to have a place for people to color, the maker's table with all the things that we talked about on that table available. And then you can have that separate station where you're going to make the sublimation sandwich and have that cool down station and things like that. And then as far as blanks go for private parties, you can certainly give the hostess an option to say, okay, it's like, let's say it's an adult birthday party and we can do wine bags, cutting boards and tote bags. And then you can let the hostess know, at the end, okay, this is how much, the cutting board's going to run in the tote bag and the wine bag, and then let them know at the end, tally it up. Okay, we had 3 tote bags, 2 wine bags, and 1 cutting board or something like that. So that's one way that you could do it. You can certainly keep the blank the same, right? Like we talked about, just have 1 blank to offer. So personally, I would try to narrow down some of the options for your hostess, especially if they're not familiar with sublimation and they don't know the plethora of options. They might be a little overwhelmed. So, use your traditional sublimation knowledge to maybe narrow down. You guys know what your best sellers are, right? I imagine that whatever your best-selling blanks are for traditional sublimation, that's probably something that somebody would want to also create themselves. So use some of that traditional sublimation knowledge that you guys already have to make those decisions, because they will definitely carry over. Let's see. And I went over, and all that whole list of parties that I rattled off earlier, and the blanks, that those all can translate from a storefront to a personalization party. So just keep that in mind. All those things, you could certainly go and to their home and host the same type of situation, whether you have a storefront or whether you're in someone's home. So that is something else to consider. Like I said, especially if you don't have a storefront. And with everything that's going on, I really do think that personalization parties could be a big thing. Okay. So make and take hosting tips. So there are some things that that you want to consider when doing a make and take in your hosting. And, you know, I talked about having the stencils available on the table to help people create their mirrored text. You definitely want to have those thin Sharpies as well, because people love to write things. That's what they always want to do first, is they always want to write something. So anything that you can have like that to help them with that process, because it is something new, you know, and that you definitely want to help them every step of the way. So it's really, you know, if you're a one-man band, especially with the personalization parties and things like that, you can totally handle it. But maybe with like a farmer's market where you could have somebody, you know, that's interested in your traditional aspect of the business, as well as the make and take. You know, it's hard to juggle talking about one thing and then explaining how to trace the blank at the same time. So when you have those times where you might have a lot of people, try to have 2 people, because I know from experience, the worst thing is when someone goes, "I'm done," and they didn't mirror their text, and you have to tell them to start over. Or, you know, I just say, "Oh, it's copy paper, it's no big deal." But of course they're like, "Oh, man," you know. So just try to watch them while they're doing it. And something else you want to note is that I always try to encourage them to color outside the line. So you guys know about the traditional sublimation bleed, that you always want to have that bleed around the edge. The same thing goes for Artesprix products. So you definitely want to encourage them to color outside the line. So then that way, when they're all done and they come up to make their sublimation sandwich, you don't, you know, it's not as much work for you to line up it for everything just so, and then that way they're really happy with their final project. So try to keep watch for that mirror text and coloring outside the lines. I mentioned earlier that you do not want to keep scissors on the table, because they're always tempted to cut like all the way down to their traced template, if you will, and then there's nowhere to put heat tape, so that makes your job harder. So keep the scissors away from them. And then something else that does happen, and again, this is something that translates from traditional sublimation to Artesprix. The color on the paper is muted, and then you know, during the transfer process, it comes to life. So you'll get a lot of, is this coming out right? Is there something wrong with this marker? It just seems a little, the color seems a little off and different from the cap. You know, that's when you can explain all the stuff you know about sublimation, and about how when we go to do the transfer process and heat is added, those colors will come to life. So that usually happens when people are, you know, doing a make and take. And then I always just try to, you know, keep it tidy and make sure they're putting those markers tip down. So then that way, when they get up and someone else comes to sit in the seat, those markers are ready for them too. Okay. So something else that you can consider is, because you guys have sublimation printers, is you can create a coloring book with your sublimation printer. So what's really cool about this, and actually this is actually a great photo because you can see where it's shiny, and that's because that is not the markers, that's sublimation, traditional sublimation. So what we do is we just printed out these, you know, this parrot, and then people could color it in, and then makes it so easy for them. So for those people who are not artistically inclined, and you guys having your sublimation printer, it makes things very, very easy. And you guys can mirror that text for them. So if you're like, the stencils, the Sharpies, the this, the that, that is, you know, that's more DIY than I was thinking. Let's just print out something that has the airport code mirrored and let people color it in, right? You can keep it really, really easy if you have a sublimation printer. Does anybody have, big question about this. I just want to mention this because it's a very common question. When you do this, you are printing on regular copy paper, not sublimation paper. You don't want to use sublimation paper with Artesprix markers because it can affect the tip of the marker. So you always want to print out on regular copy paper, that black outline, and then have them color in on that regular copy paper. I know that throws you guys for a loop because you're so used to your sublimation paper, but you want to use regular copy paper. So the next thing that I want to talk about quickly is school fundraisers. So Coastal is actually really involved with a local school. And Meredith, do you want to just jump in real quick and just tell them a little bit about what you guys do? Just because this is something that they could do with traditional sublimation or the markers.
What we do with the blanks or what we do with the schools?
The schools.
Well, there is a school on the East Coast that started out doing mugs, and what they do is they sell it out to the public, and they use those funds to fund different programs at the school. And they just recently switched to doing face masks and using the markers and allowing the kids to do their own decorations and whatnot. And they're selling pretty good, and they're making good money for the school.
Awesome. That's totally great. Aside from fundraising, there are other ways that you can get involved with your local school, which is awesome. But what I like about the fundraising is you can basically essentially set up a make and take table and set up that make and take table, get the school involved, keep a percentage from yourself, but then give back to the school. You could even have somebody sponsor you, which is a great option, or you could, get the science teacher involved and the art teacher involved, because sublimation is a chemistry term, so don't forget about that. And it's a really just great way to get those teachers involved, the PTO president, your business, and just get involved with the schools. There are so many events that happen all year round, as you guys know. Now, I know things are a little touch and go right now, but when we're back, I hate using this word normal, there are just so many things. And there are even things happening now. There just aren't as many things. And that certainly there are, adjustments being made, but that doesn't mean that that's not something that you can get involved with, especially like end of the year school gifts. Those are certainly still happening. Any end of the year class memorials. You could do like the holiday shops, getting kids to make presents for their parents. Those are certainly very, very popular. Sporting events, in some areas of the country are still happening. So are there just so many things around the year that you can, take advantage of and get involved with your school. So like I mentioned, you're just going to use those same practices with that make and take, have that designated area for them to create, and then have that designated area for you. And it just makes things really easy to when you keep them separate. And then what's also really cool that some people always are asking about is how long do I have until I have to press? And you actually, there's no rules. So you can, let's say you want to do get involved with the school, like with now and everything with the pandemic, and you just wanted the kids to color and then to give you all those drawings and, write their name in the corner with pencil and then transfer them at home. There's no rules as far as like the timing goes. So that's something to think about with the schools. So the next one, thank you, is community organizations. There are so many organizations that outside of schools, farmers market, your storefront, personalization parties, you can certainly get involved with, your homeschoolers, especially with the educational side of sublimation. Like I mentioned, it's a chemistry term, so you can make this as educational as you want. There's club sports where, I was thinking like I rowed in high school, and we have those regattas and they're all outside. And I think it would be great to host a make and take at a regatta, and you could do like bag tags and have kids put them on their crew bag or something like that. So you can think about club sports, humane society, adopt-a-thons with pet bandanas. I mean, how cute would that be? And then there are other areas, even just local businesses that might want to partner with you. If they have a beer garden and they want to do things outside, you could have like a wine tumbler, bring the craft toaster oven and do a make and take at the local beer garden. So there are just so many other organizations like the YMCA or even summer camps. I know that, summer will be here before we know it. And so there are just so many other organizations outside of the ones that we've gone over so far that you could certainly get involved with and do some of the things that we've talked about with them as well. And so there are so many things that you can use Artesprix markers with. Coastal has done a fabulous job of showing how you can use your silhouette to help create some extra fun things. So if you do have, a storefront and you're into electronic cutting machines as well, you could begin to teach, how to sublimate with, vinyl or something like that. And then this is a class that you could teach with the markers. And I think we have a video.
You want to show the video?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, here we go.
One, two, three, four. You happy? I'm happy too.
The news, the radio, and the TV all try to tell us who we should be. But the bravest thing we can do is to love ourselves through and through. Oh, 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 oh. There's something happening here.
You happy?
Can you feel it? Can you see it?
I'm happy too.
We've got to make love appear.
You happy?
Do you know it? Can you show it?
I'm happy too.
Is it playing, Matt?
Open your heart and
It's playing for me. Is it not playing for anyone else?
It's not playing for me.
It is frozen for me as well.
This slide does a great job of just showing this step by step. You're going to use regular copy paper, and you can show people how that they can use Artesprix pens to create that outline, or and then use their silhouette to cut out the glitter the same way, and then you just have a really cool project. So there are other things that you guys already have as what we say your maker space that you can use with iron-on ink as well. And there's don't forget you can create your own stencils like we talked about earlier. And I think if you have a Brother Scan and Cut, I'm pretty sure, and I know Coastal carries those, you can create your own stamps as well, which is really neat. So some key phrases that I've mentioned during the slide are make and take, even do-it-yourself station. When we came out with the markers, Meredith, do you remember what the title of the markers were? It's pop quiz. Do you remember?
Oh my gosh, I'm too old to remember things like
Permanent
that.
Thermal transfer.
Yes, Matt remembers. We called them permanent thermal transfer markers because we didn't think people would know what sublimation is. So with the first original pack, that's what we called it. And then since then, the bridge between sublimation and crafting is getting smaller by the day, and sublimation is becoming more of a known term. But we also, so in addition to starting to use the word sublimation, when we're doing this, we have also come up with the phrase iron-on ink. And I think that that's something that just really speaks to someone who doesn't know what sublimation is, because that's what it is. You're using a heat source to iron on ink. So that's what we came up with. So you can use that as well. And then also try sublimation. I mean, they say, what's that? I'd love to try that. So there are lots of different words that you can use to get people, intrigued, if you will, and then also give them a sense of, what is it? It's iron-on ink. So I know that sometimes people want to know, like, what words or phrases can I use in order to advertise for this make and take this party, that kind of thing. So those are some of the words that we use. So that concludes what I have for the presentation. I know that was a lot of information. And what's so great is that, as you guys know, is Coastal carries blanks in bulk. So you guys can pick up your bulk blanks and your markers, and you can start getting started with a new stream of revenue for you and your small business. Well, thank you so much. I hope everybody really enjoyed this and you guys are feeling inspired to, get involved with iron-on ink. If you haven't tried it already, use that code markers10, pick up your first pack, and, introduce your local community to sublimation through arts and crafts.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. This has been fun. And thanks, Meredith. And thanks everyone for tuning in today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a
All
great
right,
rest of the
everyone.
week.
Have a great rest of your week.